Hey guys, so welcome back to the BMW Blog Podcast Season 2, Episode 4. Today I'm joined by Nate once again, and we have a lot of things to talk about. So without any further ado, Nate, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little cold after being in extremely warm South Carolina a couple weeks ago. Came back to a whole bunch of frost. I know you've been getting snow, so it's going to be a little bit different doing our testing here in the near future, but at least we got those warm days in a couple weeks back.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good segue into what we're going to be talking about today. So we went to Test Fest, which is an annual test car event that BMW of North America hosts. It's usually either on the East Coast or West Coast, and they bring a lot of cars. I guess this year they had about 114 cars, which is insane. Of course, they're multiple of the same model, but there was everything that was launched in 2023 there. So we had a chance to drive it on the road and on the track as well. So today we're going to be talking about the new BMW 5 Series, about the BMW i5. We drove the car on the road and also on the track, so that will be an interesting thing to talk about for sure. We also went a little bit in mainstream with the BMW X5 50i, which is a great car, so we drove that as well. And then we hopped into the BMW XM Label red. So we've talked about this car quite a bit, right? So I mean, they're on our YouTube channel, so you can see or listen to our thoughts. But we're gonna touch on that one more time. And I guess I'm gonna be talking also a little bit about the BMW iX M60 long-term press car. I'm gonna explain what that is and what I plan on doing with that. And then maybe we're gonna touch on the latest news a little bit, which is the BMW M3 was a trademark registration that happened, recently. So we can talk about that. And then maybe I'm going to end with my own topic on the BMW i3 versus i4 because I just got a new i4. So I can explain why I got the color that I did.
I think it's awesome. Make green great again.
Yeah, so let's leave that for the end so people can actually stay tuned. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. All right, Nate, so I'll let you kick it off. Actually, let's start with the i5 M60 because you drove it on track. I didn't have a chance. I was too busy filming and trying not to.
Yeah.
So tell me how that went.
That was a lot of fun. That's the first time I've ever driven an EV on track. So that was quite exciting. And as you know, we were led off by an M5 competition. So it was pretty cool to see that comparison of the top of the line performance 5 Series versus that M Performance EV vehicle. And it didn't leave us. We definitely stayed with it. Obviously I think it could have easily gotten away from us, but with a little bit of effort, we were right there with it. It was a lot of fun too.
Did you see the comments on Instagram on the video that we posted?
Yeah. It's quite interesting what everyone was thinking, but I thought it was great. I do think the sound made me get a little annoying after a while, but you can definitely hear it in those Instagram videos.
Yes, I guess that was one of the complaints, right? I mean, the sound, clearly people were saying that, the car cannot do a lot of laps. And that's kind of what we thought initially too, right? But I think when we looked at the battery charging, I don't think it actually depleted too much over the last, 3-4 laps that we did, right?
No, not much at all. And I was definitely foot to the floor quite a bit. And it's BMW. It's an M Performance product. They're going to go testing on that to make sure that it can stay doing that type of driving. I saw no real fade out of it. It definitely stayed very consistent. The only thing I think it faded at all was the brakes a little bit due to the weight. But other than that, it felt great. And I don't recall exactly how much battery it lost, but it wasn't much.
Yeah, exactly. I think by our estimations, you could do a few dozens lap, easily. I mean, it's a short track there, so don't have to run for too long. But I guess if you really want to track it, you could. It's not a track car. First of all, it's an i5. It's a 5 Series, so clearly you're not going to track that. And then you have the V8 M5 in front of you, so it's really not a fair comparison. But I guess what you mentioned and what I recall from the video also is the fact that getting in and out of corners, it's a lot quicker with the car because of the instant torque. So you will feel that, but I guess you will feel the weight as well because it's got that large battery pack in the floor of the car, basically.
Yeah, it's obviously, you know, a very powerful EV. So coming out of the corners, yeah, it's very quick. It stayed right behind the M5 most of the time. The M5 did kind of pull away from us through the corner, and a little bit at the end of some of the straights, but and that's probably just due to that weight. It did feel a little heavy, but it still felt very good. And I think you mentioned in another i5 review, you know, all that battery's just right down there in the floor, so it's got a low center of gravity, so it feels very balanced. Has a very much like a 50, almost I would say pretty close to 50-50 feel. You know, a lot of times EVs have a tendency to just with that weight feel too much, and I didn't really feel it that much, but it was definitely noticeable.
Would have been interesting. Would have been to have two driving instructors from the school actually going at each other, one with the i5 M60, one with the M5, to kind of really push the car and see what it can do. I mean, clearly ours was a follow lead type of thing, so they're never going to push it too hard, and they're not going to let us push it too hard either.
Exactly. You know, it's a good indicator of how you're going to drive it, more like on a spirited drive than it would be like a full on track day. But yeah, it would be interesting to get a couple instructors on there. If you go watch our video, you'll hear like the crash avoidance systems alarm going off and stuff like that. Just those little annoyance things that, you know, keep you from actually pushing too hard. But other than that, like I was saying, I think this car's going to feel fantastic out on the road. So it felt really good on track. I know you've driven it on the road. How'd you feel with it?
Yes, I mean, I had a chance to drive it in Portugal, actually, on some curvy roads, mountain roads there, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, it was ridiculous fast. I remember, you know, talking about that in the video. I mean, it would just take off, honestly, and it was fun, actually, to corner with the car and do all of that. It's got a lot of grip, so it's almost impossible to spin that rear wheel if you want to. But I also had more fun, actually, with the i5 eDrive 40 when I drove it there, because of the rear wheel drive. So like, to me, that felt a little bit more, you know, interesting to drive. But the i5 M60 is just a brute. I mean, it's so quick. I mean, it's what, 3.7 seconds or something like that, 0 to 60. I mean, it's ridiculous. So yeah,
Which is
fast car. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty darn quick for that type of luxury vehicle. You know, the 5 Series is really stepped up. It's kind of, you know, like if you think more of a traditional BMW lineup, it's like a modern 7 Series. You know, it's big, it's luxurious, it's comfortable, has all the features. So like 3.7's really, it makes it feel very fast.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, I see these comparisons all the time, you know, that Tesla and other competitors, they do 1,000 horsepower and all of that. So I'm like, what's the point? I feel like even 600 horsepower in the i5 M60 is just too much, honestly. I feel like I would be okay with anywhere from 400 to 500 horsepower, and it would be more than enough, honestly. It gets you car seat quickly. That, you know, crazy acceleration, if you do it for a little bit, I mean, it will absolutely get you car sick. There is no way it's not. So what's the point having 1,000 horsepower just to brag about, you know, 1.9 or 2 second times, you know?
Yeah, it's an initial wow factor, but every time I hear these numbers and hear like cars like Lucid and all that coming out, it's just, I've been to enough driving schools and seen people who felt like they'd have experience driving just, you know, regular M cars and not being able to drive them well. So it just it kind of scares me a little bit to know how many people can be out there with that kind of speed and power.
Exactly. I mean, if we're talking about the future, right? I mean, when BMW will bring their, you know, real M car basically to the track, an electric car, I mean, that's going to be on a new platform. It's going to have quad motors. So it'll be a lot more interesting to see how they use those quad motors to improve driving dynamics and everything else. I mean, to me, that's the real test, more than, you know, straight line performance and all of that. But nonetheless, I guess the i5 M60, it's a fun car. It's not a track car. It's not an M5. Doesn't sound like an M5, and we talked about that. You know, the last point on that is I kept reading some comments on how they wish it had a V8 sound inside, but I'm wondering if you do that artificial V8 inside or whatever, V10, whatever sound you want to put in, if people are going to be complaining, hey, you know, just a fake sound, because you could probably time it to the telematics of the car, and, you know, when you accelerate, you'll make a different sound and all of that. But I think that'll be just a gimmick. I think people will hate it even more than the iconic sound.
Yeah, you know, and I think what people always forget about, like when they start saying things like that, is like electric cars don't shift. So,
Yeah.
so how are you going to do that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. So I think if you can completely turn off the sounds, and I think then you just have a very quiet ride, and um, that's it. So yeah. So that was the i5 M60 on the track. Just a few laps, but hopefully in the future we get some other cars. I'll be more interested to do the i4 M50, honestly, because it's a little bit lighter. It's not as much power in it, but I feel like that would be a lot more fun to drive, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so then what do we do next? Yeah, so then we wanted to see, actually staying on the i5 topic, we wanted to see if one should buy the i5 Drive 40, which is the rear wheel drive i5, or should they go for the 530i rear wheel drive? So we talked about that before we drove them. We said, okay, let's find something that's comparable. And even though there is a price gap, I believe about $9,000 difference in between them, with the i5 being the more expensive one, we felt like they're quite comparable in many perspectives. So we took them on the road ride. So we drove them back to back. I guess that's the video that's going to come out very, very soon. And we talked about which one would be the better buy. So maybe you want to tell me about that.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to see them back to back like that, especially after driving the M60 in the morning. I was lucky enough to take the i5 first, and glad I did because it was very obvious on my end, the difference between the two after that. I mean, what I do like about the i5 was it was just so good on those mountain roads. It was that perfect balance of like power and feel and smoothness and just it felt great up there. Like I thought it was a good combination of just about everything. And the acceleration, obviously being the EV that it is, left the 530i in the dust quite often. It was quite easy, and that's the thing. When you jump right in the 530, I think when you watch the video, you'll see like it took 2 corners, and I'm like, nope. I'm just like,
it just felt sluggish. I mean, I was trying to chase you basically, and I could tell that you're not going fast at all, honestly. And it would just take a long time for the torque to kick in and build up and get to a decent speed. And honestly, you just can't keep up. I mean, there is a power difference in there also, I think about 90 horsepower, but even without that, clearly the i5, it's the I would say the more fun car to drive. In many ways, it was also more engaging. I mean, the 530i, it's a 4-cylinder, so it's not that exciting, honestly. It felt underpowered for the weight of the car, for the size of the car. So it's one of the few cars that I actually felt like there is not enough power in it with that engine. Of course, it's a budget 5 Series. I get it. I know why people would want to buy that, because they want to get a 5 Series that's not, too expensive, and they're going with that instead of the 6-cylinder, basically. I mean, there's no 8-cylinder anymore. So,
yeah. I mean, I get the reason for it too, but I feel that there's no real point in that car. I was trying to, you kept thinking about when I was driving it, like, what's the point? Like, what's the real purpose of this car? And I know it's an entry level into the 5 Series, and a lot of people, that's where they end up is, they finally get to that level where they can buy and get into the BMW brand, and they get into that entry level. But I feel like it's just the amount of power in there and the size of that car. It's just like, it doesn't give that BMW feel and experience that you should get out of a BMW, right? Like it just, it feels like a big, heavy, slow car. And that's not what people imagine or know of when they step into a BMW. So like, I feel like they're catering to the sales on that maybe a little bit. And but it's not going to give those customers probably that lasting feeling, if that's your entry point and you're like, oh, this ain't that great. Are you more likely to move over to a Tesla or a Mercedes or an Audi after that,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's why I guess they're promoting a lot more the i5, the entry-level i5 than the 5 Series. And I'm assuming when the 530e goes on sale, if it hasn't, I don't know if it has or not, but I guess if I were to pick in between the 530i and the 530e, I'll definitely go for the 530e. I mean, you're getting a little bit more power. You're definitely going to be a lot more fun to drive. Probably going to get some, tax incentives and all of that. So I definitely see the 530 maybe being the most successful, 5 Series in the US. I don't know about the rest of the world because they still have diesels and other cars as well. But I have a feeling the 530 will sell quite well in the US. And then, of course, probably the i5 as well.
Yeah, exactly. What was the price difference? You said it was like $8,000 or $9,000 between the i5 and
it was
the
9,000. Yeah, so I guess then I remember now because I had to memorize that for the videos. I think it was $9,000 difference. The i5 was $9,000 difference. Yeah,
but is that before the tax incentive?
Yes, before. So that's just the base MSRP basically. Yeah. So if you take out the 7,500, then
yeah. So it's no comparison then. Yeah. If you can get the $7,500 tax incentive, there's no reason not to spend $2,000 more when you're already spending 50-some thousand. There's just no reason not to, unless, like I said in our video, you're doing a lot of commuting, a lot of you're a road warrior. That would be the only reason I feel to go with the 530.
Through the savings to the customer or not. But honestly, the i5 eDrive 40, as I said earlier, because I drove it in Portugal as well, it's just so nice to drive, honestly. I feel like, personally, I wouldn't need the i5 M60. Mm-hmm. If I were to get an i5, I'll absolutely go with the i5, maybe the xDrive in the end if I want to be, to have a versatile car, especially in Chicago. But I just really like that E5, that i5 eDrive 40, and I feel like that'll be my choice for the entire lineup.
I think, like I just mentioned a little bit ago, I think it's great all around, gives you everything you're looking for from the 5 Series, right? It gives you that plenty of feel to play with. You get the newer technology and drivetrain, the quiet, the smoothness of the 5 Series. I mean, it's just the best combo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that video is coming out soon. I mean, it's going to be quite long because we went head to head with the cars basically, and then we talked about it quite a bit, and it was not scripted really. So each one of us had their own thoughts on the car. So it'll be quite interesting to see what people think about that and which one they will pick. But yeah, it was a really interesting test. Everybody was just doing like individual tests of cars. We decided to do kind of like, some head to head comparisons and offer some buying advice, because in the end, that's what it really comes down to.
Yep. Yeah, it was a good comparison. I was glad we got the time to do that. Because I have a feeling not too many people jumped into the 530i.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen the few reviews, but not that many. Like I said, everybody would really want to drive the i5 when it makes sense. I mean, it's a new car. It's completely different. I mean, the 530i has been around, same engine, of course, different design and all of that. But I highly doubt it. The character of the car has changed much from the G30 generation. So, yeah, for sure. All right, so what did we do next? We did the X5 50. So as I predicted, it's actually the more successful video of all of them that we've done so far.
Yeah,
as I said before, there is a lot of interest around that car. I mean, honestly, you tell me what you think of the car. But,
I mean, that's their bread and butter, the X5, right? In the US, I mean, like that's a huge quantity for them. It's that perfect all-around size and capability, and the 50E, I know I kept calling it the 50E, and you kept making fun of me.
So far, no one said anything.
No one said anything, but
I would have thought somebody would leave a comment on the.
It's all good. I always was a huge fan of the diesel version, the 3.5D, or the hybrid, and it's all because it's a big vehicle that torques great. And the 50E gives you all that low end grunt of what you need, right? So like it feels great off the line. You get a lot of good fuel economy out of it with the electric system in there. It's just, I feel like a very good, once again, like same thing with the i5. It's the best all around optioned X5 that I feel you can get. It's going to give you the most fun, the most daily use out of it. Just kind of ticks all the right boxes.
Yeah, as I was actually writing my my print review on that car, I was thinking, is there something wrong with the car? Is there something that I could point out? Is there something that the car is not good at? And honestly, I wanted to find something that doesn't really work with that particular X5, and I couldn't really. I mean, the car just does it so well. Of course, it doesn't excel at driving dynamics, doesn't excel at many things, but it just does it right for for its purpose,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the intent of that car is, it's perfect. Honestly, I don't feel like they could do any better than they did. It's a good design. The interior, of course, it's a little bit arguable with the lack of physical buttons and the screen and all of that, but that's that's another thing. But overall, it's just a really, really good product. You just if you go test drive that car, I highly doubt you're going to come back and say, hey, something is wrong with that car.
Yeah, they keep fine tuning it. They've been, the X5, they just keep tweaking it and making it a little bit better each time. And I don't know what they could really improve upon next. My only thing that I would say maybe is the downside would be there's a lot of systems in there. You have a very large hybrid system. You have a very good engine in there as well. But it's just a lot of things going on. And, for over time, like if you're to buy that for a long period of time, that's just a lot of things that may need to be maintained. But like, that's the only downside I could come up with.
It's a very good point, because as you're talking about this, I was thinking about maybe doing an article on the 45e, the previous model, and see if there were any reliability issues. Because honestly, we don't usually see them. We drive the cars, being new, so we're not customers that have the car for a long time to see what's wrong with the car. But it would be an interesting thing to look at the 45e and see if there are any major issues with that drivetrain or the hybrid drivetrain. But I'm assuming over time, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are more things that can break for sure. I also feel like people that buy the X5s, they just lease them for 2 or 3 years and then they get another one. So I rarely see a lot of secondhand newish cars kind of thing,
Which is very true. I mean, that is that key demographic. I mean, BMW customers for the most part only, especially if they're buying new cars, only keeping them for a few years anyway, and then getting a newer one. So exactly. that is kind of a key selling point for them, is a lot of their lease offers and things like that. But I feel you're right. This is just a great all around vehicle. I think it does everything fantastically. You could drive your kids to school during the week, yet still go out on the weekend and have, still some fun in the hills and stuff. It still performs great, I feel.
Yeah. And then, to have another, comparison to that, we also drove the X5 M60i, right? So really the top of the line X5 aside from the X5M competition. So clearly very different cars when it comes to the drivetrain and all of that. And I think even at the end of that video, we said it, we will still pick the 50, even though we had a lot of fun with that M60i. I mean, it's a fantastic car. It has a brand new engine, M engine. So it's got an S engine in it, which is cool because it's the same engine that's in the upcoming M5, for example, in the XM as well. So that's pretty awesome. But we had fun with that car. It sounds great. It's a V8, honestly. I think it's fantastic.
Oh, that engine sounded amazing.
It was ridiculous fast. It was a lot sportier as far as the setup, the chassis, and all of that. So you can tell it's the segue into the full M brand. But in the end, I just if it was my daily driver, I would still probably go with the 50 as much as I love that M60i.
Yeah, I think we talked about this in the video. The M60i it's so close to that already to the X5M that it's just like you're already at, I think it was just over $100,000, and you're like you're already to that edge, and it's just like why not, right? And I think a lot of that stuff being to that higher end, close to that M line, it's just going to take away from your daily driving of it, because you're just going to feel like it's a little too much for the everyday.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, especially if you live in Chicago, I guess 21-inch wheels, I definitely see that suspension being a problem for sure. Not as bad as the XM, and that's going to be the next topic, but yeah, I mean, for sure. So yeah, so overall, I'm gonna maintain my point of view that the X5 50, it's probably the X5 to buy today.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, the key point was the range is now up to 40 some just over 40 miles electric. Yeah. And for most people, the average driving distance like 36, 37 miles. So now the X5 hybrid can go. You're average daily driving distance on full electric mode. So all week long, on average, you should be able to just run EV, right? And then when you want to go on road trips, you have the full capabilities of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think you nailed that point for sure. Okay, so then we continue our test fest. I mean, we wanted to test a lot of cars, but unfortunately.
I was exhausted.
I was exhausted too, and I felt like we could have done more, but we couldn't. Honestly, it was really, really busy, and it's tough to film. And I guess the most time-consuming part is really setting up the gear in every single car and then taking it all apart and putting it back together. So yeah, but we still did the XM, right? So we did the XM Label, right? I wanted to drive that
Label.
You had a, yeah. I mean,
but it is a red.
XM a few times. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, actually, we're gonna talk about the name too, because they're saying now that it's not called a red anymore; it's just called XM Label.
Yeah, which
it's
throws
a whole
me off.
story behind it.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in one second, but it was one more point before. So I drove the car a few times before. You almost drove the car. You had a press car. Something went wrong with the car, so it had to be recalled. So you're still waiting to actually have it as a daily driver and see, how it does, because essentially that's one of the things that I didn't like about the XM that I drove in Chicago as a daily driver. But if I were to go on some of those, curvy back roads, I definitely like it quite a bit. So it's my main issue was really the daily driving thing of it. But yeah, so let's go back to that, right? So we wanted to see, this 738 horsepower XM Label, right? We wanted to see if it's worth the extra money over the 650 horsepower XM. So nearly 100 horsepower more. Would you feel that? I mean, you haven't driven it. Honestly, didn't feel the difference in power, but I guess we did feel like it's a very competent car, right?
Yeah, it's a beast. I mean, yeah. the thing with the XM, no matter which version you ended up with, the speed that you attain so quickly, you just don't even realize it. There's multiple times, which obviously, legally we shouldn't say, but like there would be times where like I would just be like, oh, it excelled quickly, but I'd look at it and be like, whoa, that was way too quickly. Going way too fast.
Ridiculous fast. I mean, the car, it's sub 4 seconds, I think 3.7, 3.8. I mean, like you said, you don't even feel the speed. I mean, you get up to high speeds in no time, basically.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like a lot of people look at that 0 to 60 and, they know it's a big car. And once again, we'll go back to it's not Tesla speed. But the thing is with this thing is it doesn't stop accelerating at 60. I mean, it just keeps pulling, which is super impressive for the size of that car.
Yeah, I think from a drivetrain perspective, I think they've done a fantastic job. So if you're looking at the engineering side of the car, I think it's a brilliant car because the powertrain, it's really competent. It does a very good job of the transitioning also from electric to hybrid and to gasoline. It's so seamless. Sometimes you won't even feel it basically. And as far as the chassis, it's really an M car. I mean, you feel it. It's an M car. It's tight. It's composed despite its weight and heaviness and the size and all of it. So if you look at all these things, what they managed to do with that car. I mean, it's 6,000 pounds. I mean, it's ridiculous heavy, and it's still enjoyable to drive. Fast and have some proper driving dynamics. But as we talked in the video, what's the purpose of that car? I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Is it a car that could go to the track, but it's not going to the track? Is it a daily driver for people? They keep saying the extroverted people, but I'm like, okay, what's the extroverted person looking for? Is he looking for a daily driver to show off? Or is he looking for a fun car to go into the Alps or into the mountains and drive you fast or even to the track? So I'm still struggling with the idea behind the XM, honestly.
Yeah, it's same. I don't know who it's for or what it's for. When you have such capable vehicles like the X5M and the X6M, I don't quite see it. The big thing with me is when I got that press vehicle, I had a 760 earlier this year, which that interior is amazing, right? Like it's super luxurious. And when I realized I was going to get the XM, I thought, like in my mind, I'm like, at that price point and kind of how they're showing it off, this interior must be amazing as well too, right? I was thinking in my mind it would be an M vehicle performance, but with like a extremely luxurious, nice interior. But that's not the case. Like, yeah, it has the LED roof, but it's not, as you pointed out, it's just lit. It's not anything really special to it. And the interior is just a normal BMW M car. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like they can still, save the project if you want to call it that way, because it's still fairly new. They have time to, reassess things, take the feedback, and improve things. And from what I heard, I think they're going to do that. Actually, next year we might see some improvements to the car. But I think they should just try to figure out what the car is and who is it for. And in my opinion, and of course, I don't work for them. I don't know what the big plan is for the car, but I would just make this a high end type of vehicle, like that's catering to people that want to buy a Range Rover or a G-Wagon, basically. So I would make the drive, I mean, I've said that in the reviews also, I would make the drive a little bit softer, the suspension a little bit softer. I don't know if it's feasible to do an air suspension on it or not, or maybe just a rear. I'm not sure from a technical perspective, but I would just make it a little bit softer. Overall, I would make the car a little bit more special. And that brings me back to the label thing. Initially, when I've talked about the label, things, I mean, it's been 2-3 years now, and I was probably the first one that wrote about this, that initially there was supposed to be a label black or label red and blue and then black, something like that. So and then it was supposed to be kind of like a limited run for each one of them, and then kind of build more labels. So the label was kind of like the overall umbrella or the overall brand. Then you had like different models under that, basically. So I always thought that if you get a label red, let's say a limited edition, a few thousand units, you get something very special, right? A very special interior. And we've talked about the concept interior that I saw in the Concept XM, which was absolutely amazing. And I kind of wish they would continue that story, because they could say, okay, we're building this label brand out of the XM, and we're going to make it a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit more special. It's not going to be your typical XM. Excuse me. And then you feel like, okay, I'm paying $186,000, whatever that is. Now I feel like I'm getting a very special car, very special interior. It stands out. It's not an X5 M Plus, as I call the interior. I would even maybe offer the option of, panoramic lounge roof, whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll offer that option as well, and just trying to find that particular niche. I mean, it's a niche car, and right now I feel like it's doesn't have a well-defined path, basically.
Yeah. So, and they've kind of been a little sneaky with that too, right? They didn't like come out and say, "Hey, this isn't the actual name." They're just kind of slightly trying to change it in the background. Now it's just XM Label. I first saw that during their promo video for their Pikes Peak run. I kept hearing XM Label, and it just started triggering me. I'm like, wait, isn't it label red? So hearing about all of that, it's quite interesting. And you bring up a good point. Maybe they don't know who it's for yet either, and they're still just trying to get it just fine-tuned as well. For me, as you pointed out, it's so harsh, it just feels like you have no air in the tires, and you can hear everything, you can feel everything. And I feel like at that level of vehicle, at that price point, what they're trying to go for, like I was saying earlier, like it should have the performance of an M vehicle, but have that comfort and feeling of a top 7 series,
Yeah. And speaking of the right quality, I mean, the roads that we were on, they were actually really good, honestly. I mean, there were very few spots when there were some imperfections in the road, but they were extremely smooth and really good. So imagine that car when I had it in Chicago. I mean, I just couldn't believe it, honestly. And I'm rarely disappointed about something like that, because I can ignore the suspension stiffness and all of that. But the final point on this one is really that most of the people that I talk to at the event, journalists, they love the car. They absolutely love the XM Label red. So, I mean, I was talking even with Johnny Lieberman, he's always very critical of
Mm-hmm.
BMW products. And he loved the XM. He's like, man, that car is fantastic. And I'm like, I mean, what am I not seeing? Am I being too critical? Am I not seeing the big picture? And it's possible. I mean, I'm not the authority on all BMW things, but I'm like, maybe just me. Maybe I'm not the type of customer, and maybe I just don't get it. And people that I have the money to buy their car, they're just looking for different things, and that's okay, because that's exactly why I asked a lot of journalists there. I mean, I just wanted to hear unbiased opinion, because some people say, oh, you're biased. Well, clearly I'm not, because I'm not in love with the XM yet. So.
And neither am I. And I really thought we'd have a good cop, bad cop thing with this, but we were both on that same page, So maybe it's not positioned for BMW tradition. I won't say traditionalist, but not the usual BMW customer. They're going out and trying to get those people who are buying Lamborghini Urus and things like that,
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. When I drove the car for the first time in Phoenix, and it was mostly mountain roads, I loved the car. I mean, honestly, from a driving perspective, I thought it was fantastic. The only complaint that I had in that review was really just the interior not being, up to the price point. But as far as driving the car there, oh man, it was so much fun. I mean, I think I drove it for 8 hours one day, and it was really, 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 really fun. A lot of people that drove the car there had so much fun with the car. I mean, all the YouTubers were there, from the Canadians to the UK guys, and they all loved it. But as a daily driver, that's when I really took a step back, and I'm like, all right. So
it's a great car, because it's just it does things it's not supposed to do, right? It's a huge, heavy car, but it just is fast, and it just goes, and it does still corner really well. So it does all those things that M car should. But like in your mind, you're like, this is a huge, big, chunky vehicle, yet it's doing all this, right? So that's what kind of makes it that fun factor. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, I don't know. I don't see the benefit of it unless you really want to stand out and be different. And that's about it. And is there a customer base for that? Like, is there enough customer base to support that?
Yeah, I mean, we're also thinking about our wallet, right? Where we can probably afford one nice car. And then, if you're that type of customer, you're always trying to justify the product, right? Trying to get the best bang for your buck. But there are probably people that have so much money that they get the XM just to keep it for a while and have some fun with it, because it's so different, so special, in other ways. And then that's why they buy it. So maybe that's the type of customer. But in my case, I feel like if I were to buy just one car and it will be the XM, then I would love to have it at least 20,000-30,000 cheaper, and then it would make a lot more sense, I would say, at that point. And then I wouldn't probably complain so much about the car. But then again, I mean, it could be one of those things where we're just not a customer demographic for that car, and that's okay. I mean, we just pointed out the things that we thought they're different on it. So I always tell people just go to a dealership, drive it, see it for yourself. I mean, it's one of those cars that you really need to see it in real life, because in photos there's some angles that look really weird, but in some angles are actually really, really good too. So tough one.
Yeah. I don't think there's any angles for me, but and it's a real tough one. I enjoy driving it. I'm sure I laughed and chuckled a whole bunch while I was driving it. But I'm definitely not that customer. I'm not in that price range. I don't have that kind of money, so obviously I'm not the customer. So, I mean, I could preach all I want about why is it worth it? It doesn't look right. Interior's not special. I could say all those things, but once again, I'm clearly not the customer. So who cares what I say, really?
To end with this event, and then we'll move on. We also saw I didn't have a chance to see it. I saw the new M5 and a new Mini Cooper. Can't really talk about it, but if you watch the renders and the leaks that were out there, I mean, you're pretty much spot on. I didn't spend a lot of time with the car either, but it was interesting to see the M5 there. But we also saw the new Mini Countryman John Cooper Works, which was quite cool. Honestly, I know a lot of people complain about the car being too big and it's not a Countryman anymore, but I actually liked it quite a bit, and I feel like it's gonna sell really well. It's got this, Range Rover, Land Rover kind of rugged design, which I like quite a bit. Very boxy, very stocky. And I honestly can't wait to drive that car, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of room for that size vehicle. I think Mini can really, if they put the right amount of effort into that, could really help in their sales. I mean, cars are getting huge. And so I think they could be hitting into the nice sweet spot there with those. The M5, I didn't get a chance to go jump in and look at it. I'm sure they.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it crazy? They were so busy.
So busy.
Probably the most important product that's gonna come out next year, and we barely. I mean, I honestly, I was in the closed room for like, I don't know, less than 5 minutes, because I was running around trying to film something, and you're filming something else. So it's crazy how busy we were, and we couldn't really spend a lot of time with the car. But yeah, and then really the final point on this event, there was one other thing that I had the chance to do. Can't really talk about it at all yet, but all I can tell you is that I can talk about it in about, November 28th. In less than 2 weeks, probably. So in less than 2 weeks, I can talk about one more thing, which really
it'll make some people very happy.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll just leave it at that. I'm sure people will try to speculate, but I had a little bit of fun with that particular product. All right. So moving on, what else we said? Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about maybe I'll talk about the iX M60 that I just got. I'm not sure if you had a chance to drive an iX.
I have not actually been in. I actually haven't even been in an iX yet. I know they had them there at Test Fest, but we've obviously had lots of people already jump in and review those, so we skipped that. But now we have the long-term test, which is great, because that's the best thing to do with EVs. It's hard to get in a week to realize how good it's going to fit into your life. I know we've just discussed doing like maybe some road trip type stuff to get that kind of into our see how it fits into our life. So you've had it now how many weeks?
Yes, I mean, I was supposed to get it in summer, right? I was excited about it because it's summer, it's nice to drive around and all of that. But I received the car only in early October, and it's already snowing in Chicago. Actually, it snowed right now, so I have to figure out if I'm going to do winter tires on it or not. I'm going to have it for another few months probably. So I think I put 1,000 miles on it so far, even though I traveled quite a bit, but I drove it as much as I could. I'm going to put a lot more probably this month being home. I've always loved the iX, so that's why I said I think you should absolutely get a press car also in Seattle and test it, even if it's not the M60, just a regular iX50. It's still really good because it is arguably my favorite BMW product. A lot of people ask me, especially when I go to events in Europe and different places, what's your favorite BMW? And they always expect me to say, oh, the M3, the M4. And no, really, I've always liked the iX ever since it came out, not necessarily because of the design, the exterior design, mostly because of the packaging, the platform and all of that. Being a bespoke car, it just reminds me of the i3, being a dedicated platform with all the benefits that come with it, interior space, efficiency, the driving experience, it's different. And I've always liked the iX, I've looked past the front end. Actually doesn't bother me at all. I actually like it right now. But inside, it's really nicely done. It's so beautiful, minimalistic, but premium, beautiful. Everything, it was just done to perfection with that car. And driving the car, I mean, it's not even about the speed. It's just so smooth. It floats on the road. The suspension is awesome. I mean, I love it in Chicago, honestly. It's so effortless to drive. Despite being a heavy and big car, it's really, really easy to have it as a daily driver. And it's just, I don't know, very, very serene drive. So I have the iX M60. They gave me a full spec. Clearly, they always do that. So I have all the driving assistant features. I had a chance to do a road trip, like 300 miles road trip, and I use them quite a bit. It's so nice to just take your hands off the wheel, just let the car do its thing. Honestly, it's so relaxing. It just made the entire drive, especially with kids and all of that, a lot more relaxing.
Yeah,
I loved it quite a bit.
The driving assistance has gotten so good in the BMWs. For many years, they kind of just drifted in their lane a lot, and they'd be teased by exit ramps and things like that. But the XM that I had for that 2 days just was rock solid in the lane and just gave you so much confidence. It was so smooth. and didn't feel like it was a computer driving it, right?
It's not trying to fight you. Basically, it's not trying to fight you anymore. That's the idea.
Yeah, exactly. So it felt great. So I could see where that would be a great on a day-to-day, especially if you're driving a lot.
I spent a lot of time with the car focusing on technology so far. I've done a bunch of social media, posts on that, and even some videos where I show the iDrive 8.5 and some other features. So I absolutely love the technology in it. What surprised me, actually, I just did a story on this, the fact that it was more efficient driving on the highway than driving in the city, which kind of goes against the i3 that I had. I always felt like it was more efficient in the city with the one pedal feel, the stop and go traffic. But for some reason, driving at constant speeds, not crazy speeds on the highway, I got better efficiency out of the car. I actually, took screenshots to prove that. Of course, people, want to see proof. So I did that, and it was, it was definitely more efficient driving on the highway, which was kind of unexpected, to be honest. But yeah, it's probably a testament to the aerodynamics of the car.
And really good. I think that just boils down to the purpose of it too, right? So the i3 wasn't really made for commuting, like for road trips. Is more for commuting, so things like that. So it was geared to be that round town type car. iX is more comfortable, more for road trips, got that longer range. I noticed the same thing in the XM. Actually, right off the bat, what I wanted to do was test its electric capability. And I noticed on the freeway, it was actually better on the freeway than in the city as well. So I think it's maybe, the aerodynamics, how they're kind of gearing it for that as well. With it getting colder, is your range difference changed at all? Is it coming down?
So it just got cold really like a few days ago. So I'm going to actually have to go out there and test it. I want to test it with a preconditioning kind of thing, and then also just normal driving off. So I'll do another test very soon. I mean, it's really cold right now. I think today we had 18 degrees, Oof. 20 degrees, which is minus Celsius 4 or 5 already, whatever that is. So this is going to be a really good test to see. I'm going to fill it up completely and then do a test on it. So I expect another report very, very soon. And then I'll try to do a longer trip if we hit snow and see how it handles the snow. I mean, I have performance tires on it. It's all-wheel drive, so 600 horsepower, whatever that is. I mean, it's going to be a tricky one. So I have to see if I need to switch over to winter tires, as I always do, especially with the rear-wheel drive cars and powerful cars. But overall, honestly, I'm enjoying the car quite a bit. As exciting as it is, to get a long-term press car, because it's our first one really in 13 years. I mean, now a lot of magazines got them a lot earlier than us, and it's a lot of work. I mean, it's not like I take the car every day and just drive around and go grocery shopping. I actually have to do the work and test the car, because that's the point really. Being kind of your car for a while, you want to make sure you touch on all the points as a normal customer does, and my videos coming up will try to focus a lot on that experience.
Yeah, and that brings up one point, that it's not just about the car as well. It's all about the full experience of the EVs. So like the charging network and things like that. Exactly. So like when you do go on a road trip, I have seen quite a few pop up lately that are talking about how Electrify America's units are terrible, and like you can never find one that works properly. So that is a huge piece of the experience of being in an EV, right? So it'll be interesting.
I'm happy that you brought that up. Yeah, I'm actually happy that you brought that up, because with the i3, my i3 was a range extender, so I never really had range anxiety, because I knew that I had that back. That's why I paid every time $4,000 extra for the i3 to get the range extender, because I didn't want to worry about the charging. But this is the first time right now with the iX and now with the i4 where I need to worry about charging, and I just did. I mean, I did a long trip. I had to plan it out properly. I had to go out of my way a little bit to find a charging station. And even last week, I went to play soccer. I planned a trip. I went to an EVgo charging station. I was 100% sure it's going to work. It was a 50 kilowatts only, and it was broken. And then as I left that parking lot, I looked I looked up some more stations in the navigation system, and there was one right across the street. It was Electrify America, and they had 4 of them, 150 kilowatts, and they were all working. So actually, my experience with Electrify America that I've had in Chicago has been quite positive. So I do recall seeing a lot of social media posts about the network not being good in certain areas, but in Chicago, actually, they're mostly up. I only saw one that was down, and so far they've been 150 kilowatts, which was awesome. I did find an EVgo. I think there was a 300 kilowatts, but I think the car only does 210 anyway, or 200 kilowatts, so it was a little bit too much. But the 150, it's perfect, honestly. I mean, even now, I found a good use case. Like my wife said that I definitely planned this on purpose. But the Electrify America station, it's about 2 minutes away from the place where I play soccer. So now what I do, I actually I just drop off the car there, almost completely depleted, and I timed it. By the time that I'm done playing the 90 minutes, the car, it's actually done by that time, and I can just go pick it up. Basically, somebody can drop me off there. So now I can time it properly, take the car there with like 10-15%, leave it there 90 minutes or close to that. It's going to be, filled up, and then take the car and go home. So I'm like, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's all just comes down to a different kind of mindset, and I think as people just get more used to it and more stations pop up, it's not going to be as big of as a deal as it has been in the past. I know you currently, are selling, are sold or selling your i3.
Yeah, selling my return the lease, so okay. I can talk about that. But the last point on charging was that is this you will adjust your lifestyle. I've adjusted my lifestyle with the i3 as well, and one of my friends at BMW, Alex, in the communications department, we've talked about this quite a bit with him, is that I've been charging the i3 for the last 6-7 years at Whole Foods, right? There is a Whole Foods, even though it's not the closest to my home, it's the one that has a fast charger. And I was quite excited for a while. I'm like, oh, it's free. I can go there and drop it off by the time I'm doing the shopping. And then Alex was like, so now think about how much you're paying for a banana by just going to Whole Foods. So you're really not saving any money. You're probably buying the most expensive bananas in the world, thinking that you're getting free charging. But essentially, that was one way to justify charging the car there and basically doing 2 things at the same time, really. So
yeah, that was going to be my question, was like, is your charging difference changed? Because I know you're right, the i3, a lot of people didn't really have home chargers with those, but with something more like an iX, where you're driving a lot more, you're using a lot more of that range, do you have a home charger, or are you going to only use external chargers?
So I don't have it at this place. It's a detached garage. It's a little bit more complicated. I actually just looked into this last week. So there is somebody that's going to come out and see what the solution is. There are 2-3 people that want to do this, and there is an idea that we could do a joint or a common outdoor level 2 charger for all 3 of us, and we can snack charge once in a while. Or we try to run individual conduit and wires through the garage, but it can get pretty expensive. I guess one guy got a quote of about $3,000 to install in his garage, and then we're like, well, if you do the math, you need to charge for a few years to get that money back, and you might even if you sell the place after that, you might not get the investment back. So we're looking at some alternatives right now, because it's all concrete, so you can really run the conduit underneath, so it's going to be aerial, so it's expensive and all of that. But maybe we do just a single outdoor charging station. I also have this major issue in my life where my 1M, it's my garage queen. So
well, of course.
So I only have one spot, so I'm like, the story has been something like this for the last few years. Every time my significant other would ask me, so how come we don't have a charging station? I'll be like, it's impossible. It's so expensive. You can't really do it. I looked into it, but really the reason was I just didn't want to move my 1M out of the garage, even though I literally occupy a garage spot with a car that I drive, 500 miles a year or 1,000 miles a year.
It's funny you mention that, because we just moved into...
Hopefully she doesn't watch this podcast.
Yeah, she cut out a long time ago.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's funny because we just moved into a new place as well, and the place we just moved into has already a charger in the garage, which made my significant other go, well, should we get an EV now? Just because it's already there, you know?
Ching, ching.
I know. So it's like, it wasn't even crossing her mind until she saw, oh, well, we have a charger, so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you have a home charger, it's probably the best thing that you can have. I mean, you should definitely get an EV then, because one, it's a lot cheaper to charge it. I just charged the iX, the fast charger, and it cost me almost $50. Yeah, so it's like almost 50 cents per kilowatt, really. Well, at home, I think I did the math. If you charge off peak, it's like 10 cents or a little bit more. It depends like on the state, but it's like 5 times cheaper to do it at home. So, you're saving money. Granted, you have 2 years free of Electrify America, so you could use that. But yeah, I mean, home charger, it's one of those things that make a lot of sense. So if you can get it, yeah, absolutely worth it.
But yeah, it's just it makes sense. But it just makes it all easier. But that's something that I'll definitely looking forward with you with the iX that I personally I want to know is charging in the network, because most people that's their whole point of not going with an electric, is still that range anxiety, right?
Exactly. So now I have 2 of them, right? So that brings me up to the next point, right? So I just posted the i3 videos, the farewell video. I've had 4 BMW i3s, all range extenders since 2014. I thought I'm going to keep the car forever. I really, really like it. It's a great car. Never let me down. I absolutely enjoyed that car. But unfortunately, the lease payoff was super expensive or super high, and I just couldn't justify that. The used car prices dropped quite a bit after COVID. So I ended up ordering an i4. So essentially no more range extenders. Right now I have 2 electric cars that I need to charge and track that. Honestly, I mean, now I really have to track every single mile that I do, every single trip, so it becomes a bit more stressful. So this will be a really great test for the next year, if not more, to see how I can handle it with 2 cars, because right now I'm not driving my 1M at all, really. So it's essentially an all-electric family right now. 2 different cars too. I mean, I have a sedan and an SUV, which is perfect. So I feel like this will make for a really, really great story, coming up, and a lot of great videos. So
yeah,
I'll definitely keep you updated on that experience.
I haven't had a chance to watch your i3 video yet. I like how, I mean, I'm guessing you're quite thorough through that, because I think the i3 used market is it's hard to pass up right now. You can find some really nice ones for really cheap, and it just makes it a very easy entry point into it. And you and I are on that same boat. I always really enjoyed the i3. I thought it was a lot of fun. I didn't mind its quirky looks. The interior was cool. Like, it just felt like you're driving a golf cart all the time. It was fun. So I want to go watch that video from you and see some of your points over, because you said 6 years you've had it.
I've had this car for 3, but I've had 4 of them. So I list them for 2 years before. So I literally had them for 9 years.
Wow.
So I've had i3s for 9 years, 4 different cars, 4 different colors, range extender, always the base spec. I never changed anything on it. It really was always the same spec, just a different color. Even the interior was always the same. So essentially, I've had the same car for 9 years, really.
So then you just went and really changed it up and got one an i4.
I changed it up, yeah. So before I tell you about that, the lease payoff was actually about $30,000, 29 plus tax, which would have been about $33,000. If I would have purchased the car during COVID, I would have probably made money on it. I mean, they were selling for a crazy amount of money. But right now, I just found out actually from a friend of mine at the dealer that the payoff on a car like mine, not the payoff, the price the BMW would give the dealership to buy the car from them, basically, because I just learned this recently. BMW Financial Service doesn't negotiate directly with customers, because I called them up and I said, can you make a deal? I mean, I want to keep the car. You don't have to take the car back and then, put it through auction or all of that. And they said, no, we can't do that. But they do give the market price or the market value price to the dealership. And I just found out for a car like mine, it's about $20,000 or $21,000. So it's like almost $11,000, $12,000 difference. Of course, if the payoff would have been, 22, 23, I would have absolutely kept the i3 100%, because my lease, it's almost double right now with the i4, even though I think the MSRP starts just slightly higher on the i4. I think 57 something. But with all the incentives and everything else, I think I'm well at the same price that I pay for the i4, but I'm paying double. Of course, the inflation and higher, APR and all of that. But yeah, so I got a crazy car. People probably have seen the Instagram video. I haven't posted a YouTube video yet, but essentially it's a San Remo green metallic. It's an i4 eDrive 40, not the M50 base model. Once again, I don't want to spend money to that. I admit it. And it's got a red interior. So it's got a Cora red. And it's a crazy story behind it because I'm just like a normal customer. When I order the car, I go on the BMW USA. I really just spec the car. I don't even know all the options because, part of my job, I don't know all the options, really. I don't know what the packages are. I really have to read like a normal customer. So I did the same thing. I looked at the interior options, and then I saw, of course, the cognac, which looks great. There was a brown, there was a blacks. And I'm like, yeah, it's nice. It's perfect. It's the safe choice. But then I saw the red, and I started Googling, and I saw that a few people got, the i4 M50 with that. And they were like, yeah, this is, crazy, but cool. So I said, let me do the same thing, because I realized there are just very, very few people that pick that color combination. And it's absolutely wild. I mean, the dealership called me, quite a few times because it took about 3-4 months to get a car, built and shipped. And they said, please pick up the car. Please do not cancel this order. I'm like, I'm not going to cancel the order. I wanted that spec, And of course, the cognac looks so nice with the San Remo green. And that would have been the obvious choice, but it's a car that I'm going to give back in 3 years. I planned it in a way that I want to get a new class in 2026, basically. So I'm like, okay, 3 years, I can call this the watermelon car or the Christmas tree car because it really is, and I can make fun of it. I can build some stories around it versus having just another, I don't know, black, white, gray car.
Yeah,
being boring.
It's so true. Like, it's similar to a few years back when everyone was doing like blue on red, right? The Superman colors, like a few people got that. And it was like, oh, that's cool. And then like it kind of blew up and I started seeing it a whole bunch more. I love that you went with green. I think green's just such an understated color that just doesn't get used a lot. But whenever you see a good green car, you're just like, oh, that looks good,
Yeah.
So mixing it up and being a little unique, I think is really great,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, out of all the standard color palette, that's the only one that really was exciting for me. Of course, I could have spent more for a, frozen Portimao or a color that I really, really love. But I'm like, I'm not going to spend money on a color for the next 3 years. I also spend a lot of time with the BMW design team, and I always ask, what's in, what's hot, what's the new color, what's the new thing. And for the last few years, they've been telling me, that green is really in. Everybody, wants green. Purple, it's also in, especially on sports cars. I mean, you see the, Porsche with the ruby, a bunch of other ones too.
Matt Farah and his, unique build. Exactly. If you've heard that, that's that's like his was like purple on red, so it was incredibly unique as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people loved it, and a lot of people don't. But I think after the last 5 or 6 years where everything was some shade of silver or gray or black or white, it's just like finally getting some color options that aren't, BMW individual. It's great to see.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. If I were to keep this car and then, thinking about resale value, I would absolutely go for a safe color, right? I mean, I would do the safest possible spec, with also the option that I know people would want. But this is a lease car. Once again, it's going to go back in 3 years. I'm not going to keep it because as much as I love the i4, it drives nicely and all of that. And it's just, I just want the new I-Class. Really, it's a huge step forward in 3 years. And that's exactly why I timed it this way. But the last point on the car is, people think like I never even drove the i4 eDrive 40 when I bought the car. Like I only drove the i4 M50. So honestly, I bought this car. I'm like, okay, it's an i4. I know it's going to drive well. And I did the same thing with the i3. The first i3 that I bought, I haven't driven the car before. Actually, was Sean that went to the press lounge, and I just ordered it. I ordered it out of state too. Honestly, it was I did not even do a test drive on it. So the last few cars, I just blindly, bought them. The same thing with the 1M. Clearly, I haven't had a chance to drive it before it came out, so I just ordered the car. But that was a no-brainer.
I did this. It's funny. I did the same thing with the E46 M3. Like,
Oh, did
Yeah,
you?
I never even driven it before I bought it. So it was thankfully as good as what I expected. But yeah, it's funny how many enthusiasts are like, oh, I've never even driven this one before. I just wanted it so badly, and that we get it. So it's interesting to hear. But you said you haven't had much time with it yet.
I mean, I picked up the car on Saturday, so and then here's the crazy part: the car was nicely, detailed, freshly detailed, so clean. I bring it home Saturday night. I'm thinking Sunday I'm gonna take it for a drive, we shoot some video, and then Sunday it snowed. I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing?
Did you at least get heated seats?
I did get heated seats. I did get heated seats because in Chicago, that's the same thing that I got on the i3 because you kind of need that in Chicago. So I absolutely got that, but I don't need anything else anything else on the car. I mean, driving assistance features, yes, but I don't plan on doing a lot of road trips. I have the iXL, so I'm going to use that as much as possible for that. So I feel like I got enough things in my car, basically.
So speaking of HVAC and accessories on that, I haven't been in the new i40 yet. Are they removing the buttons and switches as well in that one?
Yeah. So I mean, it's got the 8.5 and it doesn't have the physical buttons really. I mean, they're reduced. I mean, it was the same thing when it came out, really. So they haven't really. That was the idea from the beginning. I think that's the car that kind of started this whole trend. That was the first car that got iDrive 8. Yeah, I guess it's one of those things. I mean, when I picked it up from the dealer, I was thinking about that, because I'm always thinking about content. And I said, okay, let me see how many times I'm going to touch that AC. And honestly, I only touched it once. I mean, it's not like there is no variation in temperature, in the span of a few hours or a few minutes or whatever. So, I usually set it to 70, 71 maybe if it's cold outside, and that's it. I don't go to 75. I don't go back now. I just set it to a normal temperature that I know I'm comfortable inside the car, and that's it. So that was that. And then other than that, the navigation, I mean, I use CarPlay on this one. I just set it up and that's it. So I didn't really have to interact too much with the screen. Of course, it's annoying when you do that, but there are very few functions that you constantly have to adjust what you're driving.
Yeah, and I think there's workarounds to it that people just don't really realize as well. Like the preconditioning of the vehicle. Being an i4, and if it's plugged in, you can precondition to that warmer temperature. A lot of people are like, well, what if it's cold and I jump in and want to turn it up really fast to hot? Well, you just get on the app, the My BMW app, precondition, and in 15, 20 minutes, it's warm. And you just arrive to a warm car, right? So there's newer technology and methods to make up for the removal of those buttons and switches.
Absolutely. I mean, I love them. I would love to have the AC knobs and all of that, but in all fairness, in my case, I don't know about everybody else, but in my case, I rarely touch them. I rarely adjust that. So that's it. I mean, honestly, there is no other feature inside the car that I would constantly adjust other than the navigation, probably. But then you can do voice commands. You can do, CarPlay, Apple CarPlay, and all of that. So you can do, via Siri also if you have the CarPlay connected. So you don't have to touch the screen. But other than that, I don't see myself configuring things while I'm driving, to be honest. So I'm okay with that. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. It's not my favorite, but the least of my concerns, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just one of those nitpicking things, right? One of the things I've always personally felt, and being an enthusiast, is whenever you got into a BMW, you knew it was a BMW because everything was in that same position, right? The layout was very similar. In recent years, it's kind of been updated and changed a little, but it's all still in that same kind of place. It's just kind of like a nitpicky, hey, you changed tradition. They've done that in the past on little things like the headlight switches. Now it's the button grid and things like that. And in reality, it's a complaint for a few months, and then we just kind of move on. It's just nitpicking.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can see that I'm complaining about the car for now is the fact that in the back I don't have more room than in the i3, honestly, and I knew that actually. I mean, it's not a surprise because I drove the i4 M50 before and I looked at that. It's really the same space. If you have car seats and you put the car seats in there, honestly, exactly the same space that I had in the i3, despite being a lot longer and a lot wider and all of that. And it's really just because of the platform. You have the transmission tunnel in the middle as well. The floor, it's raised up a little bit. So even if you don't have the car seat you're sitting there, it's a little bit awkward to sit. So I kind of expected that. But and then also the fact that the doors don't open too wide either. And essentially it was a lot easier to get the kids in and out of the i3, to be honest.
Oh yeah, the suicide doors is fantastic.
So easy.
But,
I mean, especially with a toddler, they could just like literally just climb through. I don't have to do
it's so handy with the big hatchback. So I mean, it's at least got that.
So cargo space. Yeah, the cargo space, it's great. Yeah,
especially you can lay down the seats and all that. So even though you lose a little bit with the battery, the layout of it being a Grand Coupe makes it quite handy still.
Yeah, I was thinking about my bike actually when I first drove the i4. I'm like, okay, if I put the seats down in the back, I can definitely fit a bike through. I don't need to install a bike rack, basically. So I actually thought about that with the i3. I couldn't really fit the bike. I would have to take the front wheel off in order to fit it. But with this one, I can definitely do it. So that's a plus. But honestly, I like the car. I think it's a safe car. I'm not going to get thumbs up like I did with the i3. I mean, honestly, the i3, even now when I would pass by somebody with an i3, they would wave at me and thumbs up and all that. It was like this little, fight club.
It's quirky. It's fun. And like if you liked them, you really liked them.
Now I just blend in, or maybe not. Maybe not with that San Remo green.
So what's your significant other think of it?
Yeah, so that's actually what I actually filmed that portion, and I'm gonna publish it. I mean, she was not into the red thing, initially. She's like, oh man, it's like, no, let's just look at that. I'm like, so yeah, but and she was like, just look at that cognac, she's like, can you call and change it? I'm like, can't, it's too late, can't really change. I mean, it's just, you just think about it as a fun car. You always like to stand out anyway. So I'm like, this will fit you perfectly. So now she actually loves it. She's like, this is great.
That's good.
My little one loves it too. She calls it the watermelon.
Nice.
Of course, she heard that. So the whole family loves it. I was surprisingly. So I had a chance to film more, her reaction when she saw the car, because she was at home when I brought the car.
Perfect.
And it was interesting to see that. But yeah, it's her car, in the end. So it drives nice, and it's all
that matters is she likes it.
Yeah, exactly. The turn radius, it's a little bit weird, and I warned her the turn radius is not as, it's really no near as good as the i3, and I just filmed that.
So small and compact,
Yeah, look at the i3 video towards the end. I put a 360, an Insta360 camera there, and I showed it. It's literally just rotating around its axis. It's so good in the i3, so good. I'm gonna miss that.
Yeah.
So nice.
God. Yeah. Like I said earlier, you and I are both on the same page. I thought it was a great little car. I'm
gonna buy one day.
If I have to start commuting back to an office again, I'm totally just gonna go out and get one of those, because at their price point now, I mean, there's some up here in the Northwest I've been seeing for like 15,000, 16,000. Just like, how do you not buy a carbon fiber BMW electric car like for that kind of money? Just like, how do you not?
Can I give you some homework that you can find a car, because I couldn't find it. I was looking for a while for the i3 that Chuck has. So Chuck has an i3 non-range extender, and he's got galvanic gold.
Oh.
So they only make galvanic gold for 1 year. I bought my i3, or released my i3 in November 2020. And they announced the new colors in January. So when they announced the new colors, I told Chuck, I'm like, man, that gold is awesome. Like, you got to get that. I think he was going to anyway, and he got that gold. The galvanic gold is so nice. It's the same color from the X2. Man, it goes so well with the car. It's perfect. And I looked for it for a while, and there are just very, very few that were actually ordered like that in the US, because people didn't want that crazy spec, basically. And now, actually, I was following the i3 groups on Facebook, and a lot of people are actually searching for that particular.
Get the rare combo.
So, yeah, it's so nice that if I could find that, maybe. I really like it. Really.
Yeah, they're coming to that price point where it's just like, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the story. And then what's the last point? Because I think we went a little bit longer. Yeah. Let's. So on the news side of things, we published yesterday or 2 days ago that BMW registered the name M3, which to me is not a surprise. I've heard about the name before. I even published the code name ZA0. I was the first one to publish that. That's the name of the electric M3 that's going to come out. And essentially, we don't know a lot of this. I mean, they're testing the car clearly. They showed a prototype last year that they're testing the new technology. I think next year I'll have a chance to sample some of the new tech with new A-Class and then get an idea of what it might mean for M as well. But essentially, they will have an electric M3 sometimes after 2027. Basically, the question is if they're going to have a gasoline one as well. And that's something that I guess is still being determined. It's not been, last time that I heard, it's not been finalized or have been approved, but there are indications that we'll still get a gasoline M3 and then you'll have this all-electric M3 as well. So that was kind of the big news today. Of course, I think if they're going to do the IM3, it's going to be like a quad motor.
Dang.
So that'll be very interesting, to see how they do that. So I'm actually excited.
That gives them so many opportunities to give it some amazing performance, like on track and things like that, right? So like you have an independent control of all four wheels then, you know, so that could be a lot of fun.
As much as I'm looking forward to that car and the new chapter for the BMW M brand, if Instagram is still around in 27, I can't wait to see the comments. Oh man, the comments will be gold. Will be gold. Can you imagine? Like the M3 is like the untouchable car,
right?
I can't even imagine the comments. Honestly.
You know,
sound, everything. Oh my God.
You know, we say that, but it's gone through its changes. You know, we threw a V8 in it, we threw turbos on it. You know, I mean, it's like,
but there was sound.
It's all it always said. But I mean, here's my point. Like coming from the M, I'm obviously an M enthusiast. Like in the reality, as long as I put my foot down and it does the things that an M vehicle is supposed to do, I don't care what powers it. Right? I mean, yeah, a lot of the exhaust note is part of the driving and stuff like that. But I think even driving like the i5 M60i and stuff like that, I'm okay giving up the exhaust note for the acceleration that I can just see the IM3 having.
Yeah, and I truly think that BMW will make a regular M3 too, because a lot of the European states are pushing back on the legislation that they have to cut off combustion cars by 2030. I think the UK pushed it back after 2035. And BMW is smart enough to know that they could still offer two cars, and they'll one for the future, one for the current people. They still want a combustion powered M3. So I'm almost 100% sure we will see both. I also have a feeling, or there are some hints that combustion cars like on the Clara platform will have longer life cycles, and now it's always like 7 years. I think they're going to extend it for many cars as much as possible. So essentially you have probably multiple facelifts. I think the X3, people will be surprised what's the projected life cycle right now. It's like really long for the new one. So I have a feeling they're going to try to extend it as much as possible. I mean, if there are no regulations that come in place, and you could have still combustion powered M cars for the next 10-15 years. I mean, no idea how the legislation is going to change, but it doesn't seem like it just seems like there is a little bit of people or automakers are taking a step back right now. Okay, we're not going all into electrification. Maybe we're not there yet, and they're still considering keeping gasoline cars.
Yeah, which is, I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's a chance to buy one of the last ones, if you think of one of the last ones, or buy used one, so you can always have a classic car and have an electric car like I do. So
yep. And I drive my classic M3 less and less every year.
See, you gotta do a review on that car, because honestly, I haven't driven one in a long time. When you have a classic car, you should do a review on that for sure, because it's definitely a classic now.
Yeah, next spring I have to do a bunch of tuning and maintenance to it. But next spring I want to definitely. There's a lot of things I want to do. I want to talk about that maintenance, what needs to be done to when after you stored a car for a long time. Kind of bring it back to life. But when I changed its storage location recently, and God, it's just still so good. We drove a lot of those classic M cars back in June at South Carolina, the 1M and stuff like that. And it's just, you get in that car and you just head out on like a sunny Saturday. It's just like, everything's right with the world, right? It's just like, just makes everything better.
Yeah, hopefully you're not going to sell that one.
You know, I've always said I'll never sell it. It was very tempting during the pandemic when they got up to, you know, $60,000, $70,000 for some of those E46s. And, you know, mine's in great shape too. Could have easily sold, doubled my money. I mean, I stole it when I bought it. And I got it for under 24. What year is it? Like 13 years ago. So like, so.
I don't know, man. Keep it, because honestly, E46 M3 has always been one of my favorites. I love the design. I love the engine in that car. And then think about it. What other BMW you could buy with that money that would give you the same joy? I don't see one that's comparable.
No. The only other one I want, as I've talked about in our previous videos, is that M2 CS. Maybe.
Yeah, but that's like
that's
95,000.
Yeah, it's way up there.
I just saw one in the so I just saw one in the showroom, you know, $95,000. So I'm like, that's, you know, $30,000 more than your car right now, basically.
That's the only other one I'd want.
Yeah.
So
I just keep that one. It's a good one.
Yep.
Great. Well, that's a good way to end this. Well, Nate, thanks for joining me.
Anytime.
Hopefully we'll do this soon again, and we'll share some more things. I mean, hopefully we get a couple more in before the holidays. There's still a few topics that we left behind, and we can probably, you know, use one episode where we bring a guest. Maybe.
Oh yeah, well, I think we have some good guests that we can talk to, catch up with as well. I'm sure there will be some fun new topics coming out in the next few months. So. You know, you got 2 new cars, so we need to hear about those as well.
Yeah. Exactly. And for our listeners and viewers, if you have any suggestions, any feedback on how we can improve this, what guests we should talk to. I mean, we don't know everyone in the car world, maybe. So maybe if you think there is somebody that's, you know, quite interesting to talk to, doesn't have to be a BMW gearhead or not, just drop us an email. I mean, at podcast@bmwblog.com, or you can find us on Instagram, both of us. You know, we'll leave all the handles and everything else. So drop a message and let us know. I mean, we're always listening to feedback, and essentially we do this because people, you know, care to, I guess, listen to us and see us.
Yeah.
Maybe
we venture out. I got some crazy ideas. Maybe we do this live once and reply to people's comments. Who knows?
That'll be a good one actually via YouTube.
Yeah,
that'll be a good one actually. Yeah, we should find a venue for that. Yeah,
yep. We got a bunch of ideas that we can start doing, and hopefully we have the time to do it.
Awesome. Well, Nate, once again, thanks for joining, and I will see you in the next one.
Talk to you later.